Okay, so let's talk about the test, not just the test, but the quizzes and the discussions as well. So this class compared to my online classes is not doing nearly as well in the discussions. There are lots of things where it's just like one little 3 or 4 point paragraph and that's it. And there's a lot of stuff that you guys could be discussing, especially given the fact that a lot of people have not done so well on the exam. That suggests that there are concepts that people don't understand and are concepts that discussing could potentially really greatly benefit people. When I look at things now, I look at class as like a game. It's a game. Your tests, your quizzes, all those things, it's a game and your job is to beat me, beat the instructor, beat the class. And a lot of students don't think of it like that. I certainly didn't think of it like that. And I've taken some online classes since I've gotten my PhD, and I game the system. I know like what the instructors are looking for. They might ask me something that I don't know about. There might be something in the reading that it doesn't make sense to me. I want more information. What do? This is such an amazing time to be a student because there's so much information out there on the internet. If you don't like my explanation, you can go find a different explanation. There's tons and tons of resources out there. Now that doesn't mean that all the explanations are correct. Some of them are going to be garbage. But in general, if you find a reasonably reputable site, Stat Online, Stats Book, or Online Stats Book, socialresearchmethods.net, a lot of those sites are pretty good. And they'll get most of the things right. And what you can do is you can use those sites as supplements for the things that you're using here in class. When I was a student just starting off in college, that wasn't possible. You could go to the library and do those same things, but that takes even more work. So if there's something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, you can come to my office and talk with me. A couple students have done that, and I feel like they've learned something valuable in our discussions. That's a way to game the system. And it's also a way for your professors to get to know you, because someday some of you might want jobs or get into graduate school, and you'll need letters of recommendation. And if you got an A in my class, but you didn't participate in my class, and you didn't come and talk with me or anything, and you ask me for a letter, I'm going to be like, who are they? And then I can look at your grade and see, oh, they got an A, and then I can write a generic, they did well in my class recommendation letter, as opposed to, yeah, they made really good contributions to the class, or they came in and talked with me, I can see that they know how to solve problems, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, so using me as a resource, that's one way to game the system. Looking online for additional resources, that's another way to game the system. I've tried to lay out my expectations for like what the discussions should be, and I said that people should try to get like 3 4 to 5 sentence paragraphs to get full credit for that. If you want to be extra sure, add an extra paragraph, right? Just by adding in a little bit more, you're gaming the system and you're ensuring that you're going to get all the points you can out of that, as opposed to, oh, I hope that this is just enough. If you don't really care about the grade, which I would say good for you, because it's not the grade that matters, it's really what you take out of the class that ultimately matters. But grades are important because people will care about your grades. You want to get into grad school and then you have bad grades, that's going to make it harder. You want to get employment, and you've got your GPA and it's listed as a 3.2 and someone else has a 3.7, or yours is a 3.2 and someone else has a 2.4. They're going to look at the higher grade as being indicative that you can do things better. So speaking about grades on the quizzes and the exams, there's a lot of variance, which is good in some ways, because as a statistician, I need variance to be able to analyze things. But the variance isn't necessarily great. So when I looked at the exams, so let me make like a little fake histogram. Let's say 0 to 10, so 5, 15, 25, 35, 45. If I were to graph it like this, I've got a whole bunch of people in here, and a whole bunch, sorry, this is a histogram, these should be touching bars, ooh, and a whole bunch of people in here, and then I've got 2 people that, maybe 3 people that are in here. And they're not just like in here, it's not like, oh, there's, a 37 and a 38 and 39, and there's a 40 and a 42. It's like, they're way up here. So I've got two people that got A's naturally when I checked the grades early this morning. Someone got a 96, and someone got a 94, which to me suggests that the material that I'm presenting, it is possible to do well in this course. It also suggests to me that they may have a better idea about how to game my system to succeed, because every course requires a different game. You have a game where there's papers, you're taking Deanna Timmerman's Writing for Psychology, you had better figure out her game quickly. You had better take your APA manual and make sure you get those citations and references exactly right. She's going to nail you. That's her game. My game is asking questions where there are multiple correct answers, but one best answer. And so if you know that's my game, then I'm hoping that you can study accordingly for that game. And when I think about how I would study knowing what my game is, it would not be memorizing a bunch of definitions. That would not be great. Why? Because definitions, often for closely related concepts, are often very closely related. Right? Covariance is, well, maybe I shouldn't say, because some people are still taking the exam. But so covariance and correlation, I contrasted and compared them. And their definitions that I gave in the reading, they're very, very close to one another, but they're different. So how do you study that? If you just are memorizing definitions, you may fail. However, if you're taking the concepts and learning the definitions and then comparing and contrasting, okay, covariance is related to variance. How? How are these similar? How are these different? Okay, covariance is related to correlation. How are these similar? How are these different? That's going to help you a lot more than just like, okay, variance is this, covariance is that. I will recognize that definition on an exam if I'm not going to be able to tell between them. Because just being able to say, here's a definition, which concept is this, that's just regurgitation. And you're not in college to learn how to memorize. You're in college, or hopefully you're not. You should be in college to learn how to think abstractly, how to synthesize the information that you take in and apply it to slightly different situations. And the better that you can learn how to apply what you learn in different situations, the better you're going to be on the job. So someone had emailed me and they told me, like, you know, they just don't get the importance of research methods. They don't like research methods, and they're not planning on going on to research methods. And I said, yeah, you know, a lot of students, they're psychology majors not because they want to go into research, but because they want to become counselors, or they want to become therapists, or they want to work for social services, or do other things that help people. And I'm not a people helper. I mean, I teach, that helps people, I suppose, and you come into my office, I will help you if you have problems. But I'm a cognitive psychologist, and I am interested in research. But the things that we're learning in this class, it's really, if you can get into the right mindset, it's something that you can start to live as a researcher. And I do it all the time. I have a problem at home with my kids. I think about, okay, what are the variables that are coming into play here? How am I responding to the kids? Maybe is there something that I'm doing that's leading them to misbehave, right? So the misbehavior is a problem, but why is it? Are they just acting out? Or is there something that I'm doing, right? And by thinking about the different variables that are involved, I can start to think about, well, what would happen if I control this situation? And I can do that and do these little sort of mini informal experiments that I'm not going to publish anywhere or do anything with, but that I can learn about my environment and troubleshoot. Last fall, I tried to get internet at my house, and didn't get internet for a couple of weeks, which made teaching online a real pain in the butt. Anyway, so at some point, the technician came out to my house, and sure enough, I didn't have internet. Oh boy. So they went through my house, and they started snipping lines. Snip, 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 snip. And because they said that my house, the lines were too old, and the signal wouldn't be strong enough, and all of this stuff, and I'm thinking, that's, bizarre. I've never had this happen before, but they're the professional. They should know better. So they snip, 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 and then they said, you still don't have internet. I wonder why. Well, it turns out they had never turned on internet at my house. They turned on internet at someone else's house, and they weren't using the internet because they didn't have a modem or anything. But anyway, they turned on the internet at the wrong house. So he turned on the internet, and then voila, I have internet. But he had snipped a whole bunch of wires. And I only have internet at one connection. And I have been in other homes in my life, and I know when I've gotten internet in the other homes, I'm able to plug my modem into any of the phone jacks. So this isn't cable, it's DSL. But anyway, I've learned that I can plug my phone, or my modem, into any of those phone jacks, and I'll get internet. And all of a sudden, I only had internet at one. In fact, I didn't have dial tones at any of my other phone jacks, which isn't that big of a deal since I don't make calls on the landline. But anyway, I was concerned, and I brought this up to the person. They said, well, you know, your house, it just didn't have enough ability to carry the signal. And I'm thinking as a researcher, like, there's a confound. You snip the wires before you actually turn on the internet. So how do you know that my house is bad enough and it won't do it? So I was on the phone with tech support again and again and again and again and again. And they kept telling me, look, the guy, he knows what he's doing. He's a professional. Your house can't handle it. So after hours of frustration, I grabbed my multipliers. I went downstairs and I started snipping his wires and I started rewiring the original wiring. And guess what? I have internet on all the jacks of my phone. He was wrong. How did I know that? I took what I knew, research methods, and manipulating variables, right? I manipulated variables, just like he did, except he manipulated them in the wrong order. I didn't. I know about research methods. I'm not an electrician, but I was able to get it working. Yahoo. So, I want to talk about gaming the system. I don't want to talk about complaining about, oh, this is too hard or anything else, because clearly it's not too hard, because some people are excelling without any type of a curve. So, what I would like to do, I'm not going to put any individual on the spot if they don't want to, but if you're a student who's gotten like 9s and 10s on a lot of the quizzes, or you've done reasonably well on the test, not necessarily the person that got the 96 or whatever, but what are you doing? How are you preparing? How are you gaming the system? If your answer is, I got on your computer and I found the answer key, maybe you don't want to tell me that. But if you're gaming the system in other ways, how are you doing it? What are you doing? Your peers could really benefit from some help. Because most of the people, they weren't up in here. They were like here. So, a number of 24s, 2s, 33s. Those are all D's or below. Okay, we have no people that are doing well that want to share their gaming my class tips. So those of you who are not doing so well, how are you preparing for the quizzes and the exams? What mindset are you taking? How are you studying? What are you doing?
Don't feel sorry for yourself. I don't know. Don't get in the mindset that you can't do it.
That's actually really, really important. And that's important for any class that you potentially take. You guys know about self-fulfilling prophecies? Like, you believe that something will be true, and then it comes true, but not necessarily because it was true, but because you thought that it would be true. You say, oh man, you know, this research methods, it's hard, statistics, I just don't get it, it's math, scary math, I haven't, you know, taken math in 3 years, I don't like it. You tell yourself that, and then you see the math, and you're like, I'm not good at this, I can't do this. You've just defeated yourself. And I'm not sure if this is in Star Wars or something else, but I'm thinking about, like, you know, the biggest threat is not the stuff that's out there, it's yourself. Face your fears, confront your fears. That's just too nerdy. And it's really important. And I know the value of facing one's fears, because I have had so many non-traditional students over the years who stunk in high school math. Maybe they didn't go to college at all, and they went off and worked for a while, maybe they had some kids, and they came back when they're 40 or 50, and they are freaked out about college. Oh my goodness, this is so hard, and I'm worried, and you know, I didn't think I could do it earlier, but I really want to give it a try. And what did they do? So many of my non-traditional students are at the top of my grade distributions. Why? What do my non-traditional students have that most of my non-traditional students don't? They have experience with what?
Knowing how to jump through hoops and get past red tape and play the system.
Potentially, yeah, they know how to jump through hoops and maybe game the system a little bit. But what I think they're really good at is time management. And they look at college as a job. They think, okay, I'm paying someone a lot for this, and I'm supposed to put in this many hours a week. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to take what I have to do in order to get the grade that I want. A lot of instructors complain about the students. Oh, they don't come and visit me at all during the semester. But then finals week, they're all walking in my door. Oh, what can I do for extra credit? Oh, what can I do for this? What can I do for that? But you don't see the non-traditionals doing that because they've been busting their butt all semester. Now, I mean, the standard saying of what students should do is for each hour in class, you should be doing 3 hours outside of class. And I think for most classes, that's bunk. For a lot of classes, you can get by with an hour outside of class or less. But there are some where that 3 hours might help. And this might be one of those classes for some students. This might be class for some of my students where you have to put in more effort. And depending on your responsibilities in life or your responsibilities to athletics or extracurriculars and other things, you might not have the time to put in the effort that you need to for this class. Then don't think that that reflects poorly on you. Your grade in this class is not an indication of how intelligent you are. I mean, it is partially, but there's so many other things involved too, right? All of those other things that contribute to grades. So I don't think you're stupid if you fail my class. I think, there are lots of things that go on. Maybe you self-defeated yourself. Maybe you could be brilliant at this stuff, but you're just so scared that you can't get into it. In my 441 class, my capstone, I have some instructions for how to do the assignment. And there's this one command that students are supposed to enter, and it's called STR, S-T-R, politics. They're working with this data set that's called politics, and I want them to see what the structure of this data set is. And I've given the instructions, and I have the code in the instructions. And I tell them to copy and paste this and run the code yourself and see what happens. And they have emailed me, and we have Skyped. I don't understand. I'm not seeing this when I'm doing it, And so finally we Skyped. I had them share their screen. Guess what? They didn't copy and paste that comment. I told them to copy and paste that comment. I told them that multiple times. In our Skype conversation, they kept telling me, I don't know what to do. Do you know how to copy? Yeah, well, just copy and paste it and see what happens. But, you have this stuff here. And I'm like, but you're not going to see output for what happens after this until you copy and paste this in. So we ended our conversation after 30 minutes. I was unbelievably frustrated, and I'm sure the student was too, but they just didn't do this step. If they would have told me they don't know how to copy and paste, then I can say, look, highlight with your cursor, press Control-C, copy, put your cursor there where you want it, press Control-V, paste, hit Enter, you're good. I would guess they're a senior, they've copied and pasted before. I don't know. What I think happened is that she saw this. And think about most of the programs that you use, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint. How many of you guys have used Microsoft Excel? How many of you guys know how to create formulas? And you do equal sum, this, blah, do a search, this, that. So you can type commands directly into Excel, and Excel will do it. However, there are usually multiple ways to solve a single problem. So a lot of programs that you use, you can just click, bold, click, italics, click, color, click, sum. And it will do the hard work for you. And because there's a command that you actually need to type, or make it easier on yourself, copy and paste in, and there are a whole bunch of other crazy looking commands, like some of the ones that I've used in this class, like t.test, data, x, data, y, and then, I don't know what else. I don't know, that's enough to run a t-test. But something like this, it looks foreign to people. It's like a foreign language, and it is a foreign language. That's our code. But you're not going to be able to succeed if people don't even get past that first fear of worrying, oh, I've never done this before, and try. You're not a failure or foolish if you try. You're not a failure or foolish if you make mistakes. The only thing that I think of as really being indicative of failure or foolishness in students is when they don't reach out for help when they need it, because most of your instructors are here for you. Really? Jeez, 20 minutes on that. All right, so I guess the first tip is to overcome your fears. If you have them. Some people, I don't think they are fearful, or at least they know how to overcome their fears because they're kicking butt. Whoever that is, good job. So how else are people studying? What else are people doing when they're preparing for the quizzes and the exams? because I can't help you if I don't know what you're doing. Yeah.
I reread through all of the notes I've taken in the class.
Good.
Usually I write down like every word you say if it's like good, about the subject at hand. And so I just go over that like crazy. And I highlight key terms where I need to, and if I don't understand some of the terms, I could, like the definition you gave me, I don't quite understand because I missed a word you said, then I go and search it up on like dictionary.com or whatever, and I try and understand that definition, and then I try and put it in my own words if I have time to do it. But,
If you have time to do it.
and then it's just, there's like the disconnect when I'm not able to do that and have time, and then I go.
Yeah. So writing down every word that I have to say, that's got to be one of the worst ways to take notes in college. Because if you're writing down furiously the words that I'm saying, you're not actually really paying attention to the words. You're putting them in this phonological buffer. You're getting that buffer down on the paper, but you're not actually processing any meaning. So some teachers, they get really mad when they see their students aren't taking notes. I'm not one of them because I would rather students pay attention and at least think about the meaning as opposed to just. I was one of the students when I was in college. And I had some bizarre experiences, like, because there were some classes where I wouldn't look over the notes until when? The day before the test. So I'd look at the notes the day before the test and I'd be like, what? What is this? I was there, I took this, I mean, yeah, it's in my handwriting, but I have no idea what this is about. Right? And by furiously scribbling it down, I had some material there, but maybe I didn't get everything and I missed some piece that I needed. So what's a good strategy if you're trying to write down, maybe not everything, but like main ideas or even a lot? A good strategy is not to wait until the day before the test or the day before the quiz is due to look at those notes. It's better if you do it that day, preferably right after class. But I'm guessing some of you guys have class right after this or other things, so that's impossible. But do it tonight or the night afterwards, because hopefully some of that information will be fresher in your head. And you'll look at these things and you'll be like, what is this about? I don't get it. And that's a great opportunity for you to then contact me or post a question on the discussion board. The whole putting things in your own word, I cannot express how good of a strategy that is. Anyone, well maybe not anyone, but most people can memorize. It might take people some more time than others, but to memorize a definition isn't that hard. But basically all you're doing is just associating this thing with that thing. And you aren't necessarily, I mean, you can memorize the definition for something without even knowing or understanding that definition. The dictionary online is a good example of this. It has the association of this definition with this particular word, but unless there are some complex like neural network things behind the scenes or semantic nodes, probably really doesn't understand the structure and the meaning of the definition that's being provided. And unless you go in and try to figure out the meaning of the things, that's going to be hard, because on the tests, I'm asking you about meaning. What is this type of variable? And you have to think, well, in the context of this question, what is he looking at? And here are the potential answers. Which do each of these things mean? Which context aligns most closely with this question? It's all about meaning. All about meaning. So, wording things in your own words, super valuable. Highlighting, one of the worst ways to study. Why? Because highlighting just indicates, boom, don't understand this, or boom, I think this is important. And this, boom, really is not much of an exercise. It can be useful if you go back in and look at the highlighted sections and try and think about meaning again, but just the highlighting act by itself, horrible, horrible. Have you done better on the quizzes or the exams for the sections that you have put in your own words?
Yeah.
The problem is it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time.
And then whenever I have that you post the readings, whenever I'm able to get in the readings, I print it off and I highlight the stuff and I rewrite and take handwritten notes, and then I would type it so I get it again. And
Wow.
I have a reference page to look onto for my notes. And yeah, that's what I did when I didn't have a life in high school, but now I have a job. So.
Yeah, jobs, kids, they put, in collegiate athletics, they put a lot of demands on people's time. I shouldn't just single out the athletes. I'm probably some musicians in this class who are thinking, you know how many hours I practice my trombone or whatever. So what else are people doing? Are you guys watching videos?
Yeah, YouTube.
So I had a conversation with one student about watching videos, because I love watching videos. I told the student that I'm a nerd, and I, for fun, will watch videos about organic chemistry or linear algebra and other stuff, because I love learning. And I just can't stand the pace of most classrooms. I want to fall asleep. You know, the instructor is talking at a pace that's just not completely capturing my attention. And then the instructor will ask a question, and then there's this period of silence, 30 seconds, 40, oh, it's horrible. So what I do is I actually download lectures off of YouTube, and I watch them using this amazing program called VLC. VLC.
Love it.
Love it. Why do you love it?
You can save it, you can fast forward, you can mess around with it a little bit.
You can save things, you can fast forward. What do you mean fast forward? Can't you do that in Microsoft Media Player?
It's like, it's smoother, you can just scroll through it.
Okay, then you're not thinking of the type of, I mean, what I'm thinking of is not really fast forwarding. But one of the things that you can do is you can play videos at twice the normal speed, 150 times the normal speed. You can slow it down so it's at 50% of the speed. And when I watch videos online for classes that I'm maybe not really an expert in, I usually watch them at about 150 to 200 times the normal, not 200 times, 200% the normal speed. So this means that the speech is going by like this, and I can pay more attention because it keeps me engaged and I'm not losing focus, and because when things are going at the normal speed, I lose focus. I haven't been diagnosed with ADHD, but I wouldn't be surprised if I have a bit of it. And watching it at twice the speed really helps me stay focused. And that section where there's 30 seconds of silence waiting for a student to answer, it's only 15 seconds now. But I also do some other things. I watch the video, and I'm thinking about the things that they're saying, and I try to guess what they're going to say next. If by trying to guess what they're going to say next, this engages you more in the material. This is why I ask so many questions in the class. And there are some students who it appears to me as if they're trying to answer the questions. They might not get the question right, but that's really irrelevant in my view. Because if you get the question wrong, at least you're thinking about the question. And by voicing your wrong opinion, then we can fix it. You learn more from being wrong than you do from being right. So, kudos for all of you who have been wrong so often in my class, but who have also been right so often in my class. Because you're actually thinking about the material and engaging in the material. For those of you who are sitting in this class, and I don't know how many there are, but I'm sure that there are some of them because I did this in some of my classes. When is this class going to be over? What am I going to have for lunch today? Ooh, this person, I wonder if they like me. Or whatever you're thinking about. If you're thinking about stuff like that, you're not engaging in the material. And when I ask a question, you're thinking, oh my goodness, would he just go on? Or would someone speak up so we can move on? This is so boring. You're not engaging in the material. You are wasting your money. You're paying a lot of money for this class and for all of your other classes. And if you engage, if you're wrong, at least you're being engaged, which is going to increase the chances, one, that you learn the material, and also that you remember it. Because what determines whether you're going to remember something for the long run is not whether you repeat it a few times, it's whether you engage in it. Think about watching television. You watch your favorite show, whatever that show is, and you talk to someone else, and they also watch that show. And neither of you sit down with the intent to like, oh, I'm going to memorize all the important things that happen in this episode so I can talk about it tomorrow. No! But if I gave you a pop quiz on whatever your favorite show was, I would guess you would all be in the A range for the last episode that you watched. Why? It's not because you're a visual learner or an auditory learner. That whole learning style thing is garbage. Oh, I'm a kinesthetic learner. You may prefer learning by hand, but I guarantee that even if your favorite style is kinesthetic learning, you go watch the new Avengers movie or some other movie that's a good movie, and you'll learn most of the stuff that's in there. Why? Because you're paying attention to it. The problem with college classes is the material is drier. So it's a bit harder to pay attention, which is why I try to do silly things to keep your attention. And why I try to bring up things that maybe people are more interested in than others, to keep your attention. But it's a two-way street. I was telling a student that it's interesting because some classes, exactly the same class, I'm using a book for some classes, I'm using the same book, same study guides, same PowerPoint slides, but one class is amazing and another class completely stinks. What's the difference? It has to do with student engagement. Students in the class that like jump in and maybe crack a joke, that class becomes more fun. And then people want to participate more. It's operant conditioning, right? That was fun, let's do it some more. Boom, the other classes, for whatever reason, I wasn't able to get that same type of vibe, and it's horrible. Not just for you guys, but for me as well. It's not fun to teach classes where students are like, so the more that you can engage in the material, the more likely you are to learn. Also, the quicker we're going to get answers from the students, which means that instead of being like, oh, come on, we can actually move on and pick the pace up. What other things are people doing when they're studying? So if you're studying and you're watching videos, get VLC. Speed it up. You miss a section you don't understand, pause it. Think about it. Jump online right then. Take notes. Look over your notes. Compare and contrast.
Can I do a bad example of something I do?
Sure.
I listen to popular music, and then I get distracted and I start singing along. And like I either like listen to normal music or I listen to classical music when I study. And usually whenever I'm doing like classical, because you can't sing along to that, you can't really move or do anything, you just appreciate it.
Yeah.
And so it becomes background noise that helps me concentrate instead of like Nicki Minaj going like 40 miles an hour.
That's kind of what I do too when I study, is that I'll turn on some calmer background music instead of something with lyrics, because you don't want to listen to lyrical stuff while studying. At least it's what I was told growing up.
Yeah, and that's what I found to be true of myself personally. There's research that if you have on music or other things, that this can be distracting. And I would argue a lot of it has to do with the type of music that you're listening to. Not all types of music are created equal when it comes to studying. I love jazz. I can't listen to jazz when I'm working. It's too distracting. I really enjoy pop, but if I'm studying, I won't listen to pop at the same time. If I am studying, I typically will listen to classical music. Things where things flow naturally, where I don't really have to pay attention, but it gets me in sort of a mindset. If I am working on typing something, I listen to completely different music. I love listening to high beats per minute stuff when I'm typing techno, electronica, heavy metal, especially Norwegian black metal. So yeah, I listen to Rob Zombie, and I'll listen to my Dr. Dre. Pow. But I don't listen to that when I'm studying. I listen to that when I'm typing, or when I'm in a groove, or maybe when I'm thinking about something and I want to be creative. But I listen to different things. And depending on what type of class you're in, maybe listening to music theory is a bad idea. So there's this thing that's called transfer appropriate processing, which is basically knowing about what the testing situation is going to be and changing your studying to match the testing situation. So there's this thing, encoding specificity, on which transfer appropriate processing is based. And the whole idea is, if you study in the same type of environment that you're being tested in, you're more likely to succeed. So, one of the great things about having the online tests and the way that I'm doing it is if you listen to classical music while you're studying, turn the same stuff on when you're taking the test. Because you'll be in the same or more of a similar mindset. If you study in the morning, take the test in the morning. If you study at midnight, take the test at midnight. Although not midnight of the day that it's due, because then you run up against that deadline. Okay, so what did you want to talk about if I haven't hit those things?
Me?
Yeah, so you said you want to talk about the quiz and the test. And I wanted to talk about how to approach them and those things. There's not much you guys repeat.
Come on, Chelsea. No pressure, it's fine.
It is possible to succeed. It's possible to do very well, but you are your biggest enemy. It's not the teachers that's your enemy.
Sorry.
I'm actually like your biggest fan. Well, maybe your moms are your biggest fans. But I hate failing students. I hate it. I hate it. I want my students to succeed so badly. But I fail some students every single semester. And it's not because, I mean, some of it is my fault. Maybe I'm presenting things at a level that they're not getting, or maybe they didn't get the reading at the time they would have preferred. But they can come to me and talk with me, and I am available. And even though it might not be my office hours, I'm in my office a lot. You can come see if I'm in, and if I am, I'll be happy to talk usually. Yeah, so you raised your hand, but I was.
It's not so much about the test, but for example, like the discussion boards. Shut up, Maya. It's difficult. I think we all try and help each other out to a certain point, but I think I've said it in my post before. I think a lot of us are confused about what we're confused about.
Right.
And that, and also having the test at, I mean, I know there was a lot going on, but having the test at such awkward times is actually a struggle.
Awkward times, so
Yes.
it's available for a week, so.
No.
I mean, there's.
Having it from week 3 and taking it in
Yeah,
week
yeah,
7.
Yeah.
As much as we're building on what we're just building on everything.
Right.
It's still difficult to have this idea of what we know, and then you take the test, and like me, I got a 38. Whoop-de-doo. It's not
It's
terrible,
one of the better scores.
but it's not as good as it could have been.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's a lot of, I don't know.
So let me put you on the spot.
Okay.
Before you took the test, did you re-go through the quizzes?
Briefly, yeah.
Briefly. Because briefly is important, because there are ways that you can go through the quizzes. And in fact, I strongly encourage students to go through quizzes before they do the test, because a lot of the questions I reuse. I change them slightly, but I reuse them and I reuse the answers. And if you just go through the quiz, let's say, and you look at the ones that you got wrong, you're like, okay, here's this question, and here's the right answer for that, okay, I know it now, that's not good enough. The whole read something, read the right answer and say, yes, that makes sense, that doesn't mean that you know. If you have a really, really good professor, they'll be able to explain things to you in person, and you'll feel like, I know that, that was easy. If they're really good, you'll come away with that. But later on, you'll think like, oh, that was easy, I know it. And if you think that it's easy, how are you going to study? You're not going to study. You're going to be like, that was easy, I got it. And you're not going to study very hard. So, briefly, a great way to prepare for it is to slowly scroll down the quiz. Okay, here's the question. You've already seen all the potential answers. What would the best answer be? What answers could you potentially think of? All right, well, this could be external validity or population validity, but this is asking about that, so it must be this one. So by taking time, not just looking at the question, looking at the answer, but reflecting on what the potential right answers could be and why one answer would be better, you're engaging in the same type of processing that you would on the actual test, which should help you out on that test. So if you're not using the quizzes as a study guide, start. Yeah. You'd raise your hand a second.
No, I was just gonna say, I did do that with the quizzes, I actually printed all mine out and everything. But I think it kind of messed me up a little bit more on certain questions.
Questions that were similar but slightly different?
I mean, I'm guessing so, but they just didn't quite seem different, I guess.
So here's what you can do. Another way to game the system. So you get some questions wrong. Well, look at the questions that you got wrong. Why did you get it wrong? So a lot of students, they focus and they're like, oh, I changed my answer and I got that one wrong. And they pay a lot of attention to the ones that they changed their answer for that they got wrong. But they don't really pay attention to the times that they've changed their answer and got it right. And some people are more likely to change from a wrong answer to a right one than from a right one to a wrong one. And other people are the opposite. Some people are likely to focus in on the right one, then they think, no, that's too easy. Oh, it's too obvious. That happens? Yeah. Too obvious. Okay, if you've identified that in yourself, that means you're thinking about things in too much depth. Lots of the questions that I ask, they could potentially have multiple right answers based on assumptions that you're making. And when I try to hone in on one particular answer, I give you another piece so you can make one particular type of assumption. But if I'm not giving you things that you should be assuming, and you start thinking about things and extreme cases, then you're likely to outthink yourself. I used to totally blow questions because I didn't realize questions like that were true or false. Like, let's say, does cancer cause smoking? Does smoking cause cancer? And like, true or false, or smoking causes cancer, true or false? The appropriate answer would be true. But then you start thinking about the nitty-gritty, and oh, well, this is just correlational, and we can never come down to a true causal. Yeah, well, sorry, we're talking about in most cases. On average, does this one thing lead to another? Yeah, okay, so you have your grandpa who's 103 and has smoked since they've been 5. That's unusual. Maybe they have some different genes that's allowing them to synthesize different proteins to clean that tar out of their lungs or something. Ah! So a lot of the questions are about on average, and unless it says all, or every, or none, or never, you shouldn't discount an answer just because you can think of a case where that's not true. Because unless we say all, or every, or none, or never, we're not talking about every single case. We're talking about things in general, which is the whole point of research. We want to generalize. We want to take a sample and generalize to a population. All right, so what you can do is when you are answering the quiz, you can take notes while you're answering the quiz. And you can say, I thought it was this one, but I changed my answer to this. And then you can go through and see whether you're more likely to change it to a right one than you are to a wrong one. And then you can use that to make more intelligent decisions when you're on the cusp of changing or not. Other things that you can do, so you're not sure if it was the questions that were worded very similarly or different, right? You don't know. You can look at that. You can look in the test and see the questions you got wrong, and you can look to see if those are the ones that are very similar to the questions that were asked on the quiz. Because on the quiz I might say, blah, blah, blah is blah. And on the test I may say, blah, blah, blah is not blah. And you know how I mentioned when I take my own test, I get questions wrong? So I have written multiple versions of multiple questions, and oftentimes I won't actually read the question. I'll get started and I'll be like, oh, I know what this question is, this one. And I'm assuming that I know what the question is asking without actually reading the whole thing. And by not reading the whole thing and paying attention, I get my own questions wrong. And it's not because I don't know the material. I do know the material. It's that I wasn't paying enough attention. How many of you guys, after you get the quizzes, are looking at the explanations for the right answers? Not all of you. Not all of you.
I'm right, all the quizzes, and I'll the correct answer in your explanation.
In your own words?
I have a specific one for that.
I mean, that's brilliant. Rewrite the quiz questions, the answers, the explanation. I would do this, try to do it in your own word, or ask it is time consuming. It is time consuming. And this is one of the more difficult classes that you'll have as a psych major. Methods, stats, biopsych, these are not the easy courses. They're the weed-out courses. Pre-med majors have organic chem to get through. You guys have methods and stats. And at this school, writing. Wow, you spent the whole time? That's, wow. I hope it was. There's no retake. But if you're having trouble and you don't feel comfortable talking in front of your peers, I'm over there. I might be intimidating. Ooh, I know about methods and stats, and I'm a big, tall male with a deep, booming voice. But get over your fear. I won't bite your heads off. I'm here to help.